Hello, this is Daryl at 10 Foot Truck, Good Attitude Services. Today I want to talk about Craigslist ads and the best way to communicate with customers when they're contacting you about your services. And the reason I'm talking about this because I've been dealing with some very vague uh, communications from customers, and it goes back to years ago when I was just doing moving labor with a friend of mine. And I was accepting these jobs, and they were turning out to be a lot more, and I wasn't getting paid what I needed, and it was upsetting. So what he said is, dude, the problem is you're not asking enough questions. You need to get all these questions. Need to ask all the right questions and get all the information up front before you decide on what you're going to charge and decide if you can do that job. And that was a problem, and so I learned from that, and I over the years I've been a little bit better about that, and now I ask a lot of questions, and I know the right questions to ask because I've been doing it and practicing it. One of the first things I ask is, where are you located, because that's important to how far you're going to be driving to. Where are the locations of the jobs? Because it could be 50 miles, it could be 25 miles, it could be 5 miles, it could be down the block. It's going to be a big difference on how much you're going to charge. The next thing I ask is, what are the items? Kind of get a general idea of what the items are going to be moved or they're going to be removed. And so that I know if I'm going to be able to do that, if it's going to fit in the truck, how many truckloads, so that I know what I can estimate. And also, I need to know what type of items, because certain items are going to be extremely heavy, and other ones are going to be, not too bad. Like someone could say, hey, can you take a truckload, like a pickup truckload of materials to the dump? Well, a truckload could be a pickup truck of cardboard, which is fairly easy, light, so I don't have to charge as much. Or it could be a safe, or a refrigerator, or a piano. I mean, you don't know. So when they're asking these questions like, hey, can you take a truckload of this to the dump? You have to ask them, well, what is it? Can you send me pictures? Or what are the items? What's the dimension of the items? So will they fit? So all these different questions you have to ask, like, is there stairs? I mean, because I've done jobs where when I got there, it was, there was a lot more stairs on both ends of the job. And so it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more time. So then I didn't factor that in for the charge. And the distance that you're walking. So is it going to be in the driveway? Are the items going to be in the house? Are they going to be upstairs? Are they going to be in the basement? So you want to know all these different things before you get to the job, so you know what you're dealing with. And also you want to know, are the things that I need to take apart, like disassemble or assemble? Because some items you go to the house and it'll be something that was built inside the room that you're going to have to disassemble. So you want to make sure you have the right tools to take that apart. Or if you need to cut it up, if it's something you need to cut with a saw to break it down and put it in a truck. All these different things you need to ask up front. Of course, the best thing would be to write a list, so that when someone calls you, you have that on a list. But with my ads on Craigslist, I always say, please text me or email me, because then it makes it easier for me to look at all that information and go back and forth and get the information on a text or an email. I know calls, a lot of people, they say you should answer the phone every time, but I get a lot of junk calls on my phone. And so it's kind of, it's hard to decipher. I get so many calls that are, I don't know what you guys experience out there, but I get a lot of junk calls on my phone from the scam artist or whatever they are. So I don't really tend to answer a lot of my phone calls unless I could, if I know who it is, or, but a lot of times I just prefer to have a text message saying I'm looking for, someone to help me, and then I can go back and forth with a text or an email. So that's just kind of what I was discussing today, or thinking about today, because I've had a couple of customers just recently being extremely vague. And even though after they'll text message me, can you do this, something vague like, can you move me tomorrow? And then when I start asking where you're located and, the items, and they still don't get back to me, they still say, well, what time can you be here? Or like, how much you got to charge? And then I'll ask them again, or where you located and what are the items. And maybe they'll say, well, I'm located here, but they won't say what the items are. And they'll ask them again, so what are the items? And they may like say, well, it's a couple of these, it's a few this, a few boxes and this. And I'll say, well, what are the dimensions, and what, and are there heavy items? And it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, they may not want to answer those questions. So at that point, I usually tell them I can't do the job, because I really need that stuff up front before I'm going to make an estimate, or going to decide if I'm going to do the job. So yeah, ask questions as detailed as possible. If you have to write a list, so if you do answer the phone, because if you're a person that wants to answer the phone, you have that list there that you can ask all those questions, ask all those questions, and have it on a list. And if you're like me and you want to get a text message, then of course you have time to put those questions out there. And that's just kind of a tip, something I was thinking about, because I've been dealing with it. And I don't know how you guys deal with it, but that's how I deal with it. And sometimes it gets to a point where it gets frustrating, so that's when I just decide not to take the job. Because I figure if they're that vague and they're not going to answer my questions, then it's better that I don't take the job, because I really need to know that stuff before I'm going to be there and show up to that job. Also, knowing if you know the details of the job, and if there's things that you need to disassemble or assemble and all that, you're going to show up to the job with the right proper tools. If it's like there's going to be appliances, and they tell you there's going to be appliances, then you can show up with your appliance dolly and things like that. I mean, there's sometimes like certain things I can't take in my truck, and like for instance, I can move refrigerators if they're going to be disposed of, or if they're a smaller refrigerator, like an apartment size refrigerator. But since the height of my truck door going into the truck where the roll-up door is, unless there's going to be a forklift that's going to move the refrigerator in, I don't have a ramp or a lift gate. So as far as delivering appliances, I'll deliver washers and dryers, but when it comes to refrigerators, I have to be selective, because some of these refrigerators they're fairly tall, and they're a little bit more bulky, and like I said, it's without a ramp. Sometimes I have to lay them down, and I don't like to do that, because really you're supposed to, when you're transporting a refrigerator from one place to another, you really want it standing up in your truck. So because of the compressor, so a lot of times I can't do those. So that's another example. I've had people call me about that. Can you deliver a refrigerator? And I have to get the dimensions of the refrigerator to see if I can do it. So stuff like that, like if it was going to the dump, that's a different story. But yeah, get all the information you can up front, and you'll learn, which questions to ask. And if you can get pictures of the items, that's very helpful. But sometimes pictures can be deceiving. I've had that problem. Or if it's close enough, that's another thing too. It's like, I'll go do estimates, and I'll offer a free estimate. But I made some mistakes just recently, where I told a guy I'll do a free estimate, and I had to drive way out of town. And it would have been a good job, and I gave him a fair price, but they never got back to me. So I wasted all that gas money going out there. So now I'm going to be a little more careful about, like, I'm doing a free estimate on that's far out of town. Like, if it's close by, I can, it's not a loss. But if you have to drive 30 miles or whatever, 25 miles to go do an estimate, you think you're going to get the job, and they don't hire you, you spend all that money on gas and all that time. So you got to be careful with that too. So just some things to think about when you're trying to get jobs. And that's what I got as far as tips on that. And we learn as we go, and we learn from our mistakes, and we keep improving our business over time. That's part of the process. Anyway, so have a great evening. This is Daryl at 10 Foot Truck, Good Attitudes Services, signing out.